for October. So welcome you here to join us. I would ask at this point if we stand, and Grace will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Homer Spring.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together this evening to do the business of the city and hope that we think and do what's best for its citizens. We pray that you be with those who are suffering now from the disasters throughout the United States, in North Carolina and in Florida and the other states, and that we pray that you guide us to make wise decisions in your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Homer. All righty. In front of you is our agenda. I would look for you to give that a look over, and I would expect a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the agenda as prepared, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. Okay. I would point out that on our agenda, this meeting has no provision for public comment. There will be a public comment period at the Jacksonville City Council meeting when this issue comes before them on November 19th. And they will be voting on whether or not to adopt a change for the original plan. So we have our minutes from last month's meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented and recorded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Very good. City Council update from our fearless leader, City Councilman, Seth Logan Sosa.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. I actually have a few things tonight to go over. So our last meeting, we did approve two things, the map amendment, rezoning of 1310 and 1316 Hargett Street. And then also the zoning of Jim Parker Road. There'll be residential multifamily housing, which would be good to help some of our housing crisis that we're having. So that would be good in the near future. And also two other things. Let's see, October 23rd at 10:30 will be the Beirut Memorial Observance. That'll be down there at the City Gardens. So that would be a good thing to come out and see. I don't know if it'll be as big as last year. That was a big one, but we'll hopefully get a good turnout. And then also we had National Night Out, I think about 2 weeks ago. Hopefully a lot of people came out for that as well. That was a great attended event, especially on a school night in the middle of the week. So at least it wasn't as hot as August, so that was good. But besides that, that's everything. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Logan.
Yes, sir.
I see that we have no old business on the agenda, so we're into new business. Our first item is a map amendment master plan. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Advisory Board. Agenda item 1 is a master plan and terms and conditions modification for Georgetown Landing Plan Development at 398 House and Hansel Avenue. Before you on the screen is the aerial location of the property. This property is 2 parcels totaling 35.9 acres. On March 5th, 2013, the City Council approved a rezoning at that time to Planned Development Residential submitted by Thomas T. Hunter. The request was to rezone from RM5, Residential Multifamily 5, that was under our old zoning ordinance in 2013, to Planned Development Residential. It's been recently acquired by M&HM Development, and they have now submitted a request to modify the master plan in terms and conditions that go along with the existing zoning of Planned Development Residential. Again, this is not a map change as the direction suggests. The map amendment is the process that we follow per the UDO. But the property is already zoned PDR, Planned Development Residential. This is a request to modify the original approval. Speaking of the original approval, again, it was approved on March 5th, 2013. And at that time, the approved uses as part of the master plan were multifamily apartments, a restaurant, a medical facility, and a marina. Before you is that original master plan that identified areas for multifamily a marina, restaurant, combination urgent care facility, that was the medical facility, and additional apartments. This is the current zoning of the area. Surrounding area is zoned residential multifamily low density and used primarily for single family, while there are some undeveloped tracts of land. And then across New River is Camp Geiger and Camp Johnson. And further up Georgetown Road is the Onslow County School Board and WASA's home office. The current request is a big change from the original approval, and we'll get more into a comparison. But before you on the screen and on page 10 of your agenda is the proposed terms and conditions. And basically this mirrors a section out of the Unified Development Ordinance where they pull the planned development residential section and then identify what differences they propose with their master plan and then what areas they will just allow the Unified Development Ordinance to carry forward. In this case, their main changes relate to density. There is no longer any commercial aspect to the property proposed. And then there is a slight change to a request as part of the terms and conditions, change in setbacks. This is a master plan of the property as proposed by the current developer, M&HM Development. It is oriented in a way to mirror the mapping that the city has. Just kicking back to previous slides so you understand the orientation. I do have a slide that would present it horizontally, a little bit larger if the board would like to see that before you. Before you on the screen is a comparison with the surrounding RMF residential multifamily low density zoning, the current approved master plan terms and conditions with the planned development residential, and then what is proposed. Currently in the RMF LD, residential multifamily low density, the allowed density development per acres is 8.71. The original master plan approved with Georgetown Landing is 14 units per acre. And under the current proposal, that would be changed to 6.13 units per acre. Use types allowed in the RMF LD are those identified in the UDO, predominantly single family, duplex, and accessory residential uses. The uses proposed that were part of the original master plan approval for Georgetown Landing, again, included apartments, marina, restaurant, medical facility, a clubhouse and pool. The current proposal proposes single family on-site built, townhomes, and a community docking facility / marina. The marina is added on because at some point, the slips that go with a community docking facility may not all be sold to the potential homeowners in the development. The developer could be left with a handful of slips then that they would then make readily commercially available. But the other typical uses that you see with marina, fuel cells, boat repair, boat storage would be not part of this approval. Currently, in regards to a gated community, it's allowed in the RMF LD. It was proposed with the original master plan and approved with that original master plan. Currently, as proposed, it would be not allowed with this development. Setbacks, again, for the RMF LD are 20-foot front, 6-foot side, 15 rear. The current approved had a 10-foot front, a 5-foot side, and 10-foot rear. Under the proposed current plan, it would be 20-foot front, 15 rear, and 5 side, more matching the zoning in the area. Buffering, currently RMF LD doesn't require any. The original approval had a 30-foot buffer surrounding it, including let me correct myself, a 30-foot buffer adjacent to just 3 lots. In addition, a brick wall was proposed around the development. Under the current development, the developer, as part of their terms and conditions, are proposing a 20-foot type A buffer with no fencing. There will be accommodations for natural buffer to remain. Streets, currently in RMF LD per city standards. The current approval per the PUD, it was primarily private drives with the connection to the existing street network. With the proposed, is per their proposed plan unit development, However, there is a public road proposed through the middle of it, tying onto some private streets and private drives. Currently, one of the main differences with this proposal, it's easily, archaeological survey. The current proposal developer is required as part of their terms and conditions to do an archaeological survey for sites of historical significance, grave sites, buildings and whatnot that could be on the property that may need to be protected. Traffic impact analysis, TIA, currently in the RMFLD, it's required per the UDO. The current approved master plan required it per the PUD, and with this new proposal, the developer will be required to do a traffic impact analysis. I will be happy to go over anything else that the board may need clarification on, but with all this said, staff is advising the Planning Advisory Board to recommend to City Council to approve this map amendment or this modification to the master plan in terms and conditions with the evaluation found within the staff report based on findings of fact A through J being found in the affirmative, that the master plan in terms and conditions modification allowing a residential development with more suitable density and type that is consistent with the surrounded area. Staff, along with representatives of the applicant, are in attendance and happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Jeremy, did you see anything when you first saw the plan that gave you concern about would not comply with the existing unified development ordinance?
No, sir, and we will, part of the plan development residential and the master plan is it is a very general plan, just like the original approval in 2013. That is the tool in the unified development ordinance. It gives the developer to propose their own type of development. Conceptually, we're proposing a mix of single family and townhomes, but in terms of compliance with city standards, that will go through normal review processes: subdivision, site plan, stormwater, erosion control, traffic impact analysis. Those things will still go through just like any other development in the city, are reviewed and ensured by staff to meet city standards.
Jeremy, so a PDR, it doesn't give them like I saw there was a differentiation between the setbacks, I guess what the UDO requires. I think there was like a foot difference in one of them. Does this give them a free pass to bypass the UDO as far as that goes?
It does. They get to identify their own setbacks, and those are approved with this approval. If city council, if it makes it to city council and city council chooses, they are approving those changes. It's basically its own zoning district is what's created via the master plan. The plan development residential, and then your master plan identifies the standards within. The majority of the standards the MNHM development is proposing with Georgetown Landing is adherence to the UDO. Their differences are setback standards and then the street design on their private streets.
I had a question on the private street section. So are they required to pave it and everything as well?
Yes, all streets will be required to be paved.
Sidewalks as well?
Sidewalks, yes, they are proposed.
Same standards we have out, even
Yes, sir.
though it's private?
Yes, sir.
And it won't be gated?
It will not be. Per their terms and conditions, they will not be allowed to gate it.
I did have another question on like the dock and the marina side. Since it won't be private, so can anybody use that slip to launch, or is it strictly whoever has slips, or how's that part going to work?
The initial, it's a community docking facility. Slips are sold to to residents in the development. And then if they don't sell them all, as you know, not every homeowner will want one, and they may have excess slips at the end of their selling. Mm-hmm. But as far as has been proposed, it is access for the development.
Are they just going to be slips, or are slips with lifts? You don't know.
I do not know. We have not gotten to that term of approval, but that could be part of a docking facility, is that ability to have a lift up out of the water, I would assume.
Do you have a bigger map of that? Those who are.
Alan, could you unhide the second slide to this?
Sorry.
There we go. So this is oriented differently. The river there, peninsulas, now to the, what would have been north is now your east is on the upper side of the page, but it is a little bit larger, so now you understand, or you can see more clearly what's being proposed.
Chairman, if I may. Jeremy, help me with this, but the green area is the buffer around the development, the 20-foot buffer. That's not required, but the developer is opting to do that without a fence. That's the green area that you see all the way around. The boat slips, which are a community docking facility by zoning regulations / marina. The reason for the marina aspect is CAMA considers anything beyond 11 slips is considered a marina, but also the fact that they may sell these to non-residential lot folks, that it's a marina and a community docking facility. It's kind of both. So it's both. That's why both are specified. The area in the peach color at the top, that is the community dock facility, the marina, along with the boat slips in the river.
I would circle it, but our teleprompter is not working tonight.
So then the purple area that is to your left, since the colors kind of run together, that is the area that's 7 acres, 120 units max. That is strictly identified as townhouses. So that's all that will be there.
Do you know if they're going to be like the tall ones that are down there on the river now, or are they just going to be like standard townhomes, 2 stories?
That has not been specified.
Okay.
Then the next purple area is a mixture of either single family and or townhomes with a maximum number of units at 60, I believe it says.
Yes.
So if planning board recommends approval of this and council approves it, this is what they will be locked into. And then the single family is the area shown in blue. The area that you see in the cream tan color, that's all flood zone. So there's no proposed development within those areas. Then there's also 2 or 3 ponds that are identified for stormwater features based on where they think that they'll have to put the ponds in based on the topography of the land.
But those could change. Those are there, based off of their initial assessments of the properties, but ponds are utilities and they can change location depending on what works best to keep that drainage on site on the development.
So Jeremy, if you can go back to the currently approved plan that's in place today. There's 2 primary areas on this. You can't circle, but if you look, there's an L shape. That is what was identified as the commercial component, the marina, restaurant, urgent care facility, and apartments. Then the rest of the development was identified as all apartments. There was no single family, there was no townhouses under the current adopted approved plans and terms and conditions. This is what can be built today.
With no buffer.
The only buffer is at the bottom of the screen. There's 3 or 4 lots there. There's a 30-foot buffer that was shown around those parcels. That's all the buffering that was being proposed. That's shown on the current adopted plan. This could be constructed today. This has an approval. It's had an approval for 11 years.
Council won't be acting on that. They're only acting on the change.
Council's being asked to modify this plan to the new plan. So if the new plan gets adopted, it replaces this plan. This plan will no longer be in effect, along with all those other changes that Jeremy's identified in the comparison table. And if you go back to that comparison table, one thing that I would strongly point out is the fact that the existing standard of 14, the current adoption brought that down to 8.771 is what it was before. The current master plan's 14, the proposal is 6.13. So the applicant today is asking for a lower density than the remaining zone property of Georgetown.
So the original 11 years ago would have allowed how many?
14.
No, I mean, possibly how many structures?
How many
buildings?
residences would have been built?
About 300.
It was a 400, I believe.
440 units were proposed.
Before 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
2000
now it's dropping it down to,
2013, the master plan identified over 400 units.
yeah.
This proposal brings that down to how many?
220.
220.
About a 50%.
It almost cuts it in half.
Is more than half.
Yeah, more than half. Okay. So going back to the new proposal, the community dock facility? Is that just for that community, or since it's open, it's not gated? If somebody else went back there and wanted to launch a jet ski or something, are they allowed to?
They're not proposing a boat slip for launching.
Okay, all right, okay.
There you go.
Because I didn't know. I mean, so no launching from there. Can't back a trailer down there, launch a boat
Correct.
and
They're not
park it in
proposing
the
that with this
parking lot.
development.
That'd be a camera issue anyway.
And again, these slips are shown preemptively. CAMA may not approve that many slips.
Right.
They are not required to go through CAMA permitting for a master plan, just like they're not required to go through subdivision or site plan review. It is a concept. It is a bubble sheet.
Okay. So one of my concerns with this is I get it, I understand it, that developers doing what they're doing. I think, hopefully for the best interest of the community. And I know they're not required to deal with the road system going back there. I live back there. I know what it's like to drive down that road, and do the little hook, and come up, So I'm concerned as a citizens, besides a board member, the safety aspect of it, that maybe, hopefully, the city will consider in the future to somehow widen the road, get some, there's no shoulder. It's patchwork. I think, once all this is done, hopefully the city will think about, down the road. I can't make that decision for them, but to make a significant improvement to the pavement, the shoulders, and somehow make it a little safer, because obviously you're increasing the number of traffic, and the TIA will show that. So obviously this is not a burden on the developer, but as a city, that we be very concerned about the safety to the citizens out there when we're making such improvement. I get it, this piece of property is going to be developed one day. It's just, whether it's today or was 11 years ago or it's 11 years in the future, but concerned about the road system going back there. I'm not asking the city to put in a whole new road. It's just take care of what's there. I walk that road at night, and I come through the park, and I just see back and forth and the patchwork, but there's no shoulder. You can get in there, and it's pretty tight sometimes. And then when we increase vehicles going in and out, not only as residents but also construction, now it gets really tight. I mean, there's been times when a city truck's going down there to pick up trash. I mean, I got to be really careful about trying to get past them. That's a concern of mine, is just making sure, looking at the future, how the city's going to help maintain that. Like I said, it's not the developer's problem. It's not their issue. It's as a city that we take good care of this area and give the best to everybody out there. Those who are currently been there, been living there forever, and we make sure we just take care of that community.
I don't disagree with the thing you just said. That's not our charge this evening, but your point's well taken, and hopefully Councilman Sosa heard that.
Yeah.
So, very good.
Mr. Chairman, when back in 2013, when this first came up, I was the only, Dr. Lasan and I were both on planning board then, but I had concerns about the traffic and about the one exit and entrance to this place. And I've driven down there a couple of times since then, and it hasn't changed any. But, and I know when you have, in the present way it's zoned, you could have 400 houses down there, and that's a lot of people to go out of one exit. Plus, they have nowhere else to go. It's not like they can go anywhere else. And it's already backed up to a flood zone, so you're talking water coming in, and you can't get out, and then we're looking at something that's not very pleasant. You're sort of pinned in. So that's one of the reasons why in 2013 I voted against this. And I will admit that 200 houses is better than 400 houses. But again, I say it's still too many for me to have down there. And I understand the developers trying to maximize the money they make, but again, I just, in all good conscience, I can't go with something where we're putting that many people. The residents there have no choice. They're there, and they've been there their whole lives. And you're having new people come in. They have a choice. those new people will drive down and say, well, we don't think it's a good idea because we're sort of pinned in. But the people who live there don't have that choice. I think you know how I'm going to feel on it. But
Yeah.
it is a step in the right direction, but not enough to make me feel good about it.
Jeremy, I have a question. So let's say we do pass this and we move forward, and they do the traffic analysis, and it comes back where it won't pass. What happens at that point?
I've been in this field for 25 years. I've never known a TIA not to, a TIA is produced to make recommendations for improvements into the road
If it
system.
passes, it moves forward. There's not, the DOT can't come in there and say, you know what?
These are non-DOT roads. This is all city.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Jeremy, can I ask, do the PDRs, do they ever expire? Like, could we set an expiration on this for?
No, they
No.
run with the land. That's why the current one is still exists.
Okay.
We have one other planned development approved residential in the city, and that's Holiday City Mobile Home Park. But once it's approved, the master plan sits with it indefinitely. Now, city council on their own accord could direct staff to bring something forward to rezone it, blank rezone it. And that would be the only recourse with a non-modification process.
And the city can do that without any, like,
City council would have to direct staff to do that.
to do that. But it doesn't have to be brought up by like a developer. It can be just done as the city council can move
City
to.
council would need to direct staff to do a rezoning.
But logically thinking, we would zone it the same that it was before, the same that Georgetown is now, which allows 8.71 units per acre.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a trade-off.
That's right, it wouldn't be an improvement.
I mean, that's why I kind of reiterated that a second ago. This proposal is 2.5 dwelling units less than if we were to go back to that base district. The changes to the setbacks are not that substantial. The private roads, yeah, they'd lose the ability to do that. Does that make it not work? I don't know. That'd be for them to decide.
Yeah.
Can you approve the single-family aspect of it and not the townhomes? And, because obviously that would reduce people. Is that possible, or? can you say you can-
The developer would have to make that part of their terms and conditions. They would have to submit that.
But we can't.
This works very similar to a conditional rezoning, where the conditions and part of the master plans in terms of it has to be proposed by the developer. They could be recommendations, would you consider this? But
we're all or nothing, Jeremy?
right.
Okay.
And this is really all or nothing anyhow, because if the developer decided they want to go back to their original master plan, they could move forward on that tomorrow, whether or
Right, they
not
could
we
submit
approve it.
site plan subdivision tomorrow, site plans, and as long as they met city standards and
And the terms and
terms and
conditions.
conditions.
Yeah.
They can move forward with 400 units rather than
Correct.
220 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, I think I agree with Brian King. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a better use. I think we're reducing the number of places being built there. And once again, as an advisory board, we're an advisory board. We're not the final say. So it's going to go to city council. I invite anyone who's out there listening to us that, they show up, okay? We don't, whether we move it forward or whatever we do here, the city council is going to have their say, okay? We're not the final stop here. So I don't want anyone in the audience or even watching feel like, okay, this is where the ball dropped, I liked what I see versus, what we saw 11 years ago. I think it's a good use of the property. But like I said, my own concern, not to the developer, is just that make sure in the future moving ahead that we be concerned about how to get in and out of there, not proposing a brand new road back in there that maybe TIA, who knows what happens there, but that's another subject. But I live back there, and if a tree fell down, that we have some type of plans in place to get people in and out of that place, okay? Not everybody has a boat. I don't plan on swimming across the New River and fighting with an alligator to get to the other side to take care of my family either. But, I know I'm being a little crazy with that one, but just concerned there. So I like what I see as far as what is being proposed. I think it's a good improvement, and like I said a while ago, I'm not trying to beat this, but it's going to be developed. It's just trying to find something that's going to fit well, but also services the community that's out there at the same time, as far as making sure that we keep everybody safe, getting in and out. And then we have accessibility, but also have something in place in case there is something, Hurricane Florence, or there, because Jacksonville was cut off during that time, so, yes, water rises, and hopefully we will keep everybody safe.
And not to belabor the density comparison more, but looking at the other residential zones in the Unified Development Ordinance, the only two zoning districts with a lower density are residential single-family 20 and residential single-family 40. And those are typically the outskirts of the city, the ETJ area, for large farmland or large undeveloped tracts that the city brought in. At 6.14, this is actually lower density than our most predominant single-family zoning district, RSF 7. So just with that in mind, I mean, it's.
And Jeremy, R7 is 7,000 square feet on the lot?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I like this. I think it's better than going back where it was 11 years ago, or even before that, if we go back to the original zoning. So I think there's a major improvement,
Okay.
The entrance will be on Conover Street, correct?
Or one of the entrances
One of the
into the
entrances.
development.
What's
but
the
it-
other one over here that has a little something?
Allison Hatchell Avenue, and then as you come around, Blue Claw Bailey Avenue.
Okay,
Those are the three public streets, in addition to the public street being proposed that would currently divide your pink area, your townhomes only, in the single-family / townhome area.
Do we have an aerial?
Yes, sir.
No, I think maybe put a little more perspective as far as Google Earth map.
Yeah, there you go.
We have something that actually pushes on out, where we see more of the area.
This is all I have, I'm sorry. This is all I have.
That's all we have. Okay.
Where does the paved road currently stop? Right there at the corner of Allison Hatchell and what's that other road? Hawthorne?
Paul Lane,
Yeah, Blue Claw's not paved yet, is it?
No, it isn't, and the developer can correct me if I'm wrong, but they are proposing to pave that as part of this development.
Could the developer currently scratch their master plan and just go ahead and move RS F7 and sort of do what they want to?
No, they are locked to the current approved master plan only. Now, and there's no stipulation that they could do part of that and be done. There's no requirement to fully build out that master plan. They could build a portion of it, they could build one other portion of it, there's no,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's.
Yeah, so it locks them into whatever's proposed, whether it's the old plan or
Limits
this
them to
plan.
specifically what was approved then.
Okay, very good.
Well, I think the developers try to reach out to make a more workable situation. I wouldn't want to go backwards. I think we all need to move forward.
Any other questions? If not, I could entertain a motion.
Don't look at me, I'm voting against it.
Are you really?
I'm going to make a motion that we go ahead and move forward on this, and also as it's been presented.
Okay. We have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second over here. Thank you, Chase. So all in favor of the changes as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay. Let the record reflect.
Thank you.
And if I can
Okay.
say one more thing, I know it's done with, but hopefully with our city council representatives, he'll take that to city council and let it be known my concerns as far as the other city's responsibilities to this community.
I mean, it's definitely been on the radar for years about that road.
Be cognizant of that and be good keepers of what we've done. And we appreciate the people who've shown up here tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And having said that, we have a couple more things on our agenda separate from this. If somebody feels the burning desire to stay and learn and see how we continue to do the city's business, you are welcome to stay. You are welcome to go if you'd like. So. And if you cannot sleep one evening, you catch us on G10 at 2 in the morning. All right. Item number 2 is a Unified Development Ordinance text amendment on standards.
Wait a few more seconds.
It looks like everybody is pretty much leaving. Anytime, Ryan, your call.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 2 before you tonight is a staff-initiated Unified Development Ordinance text amendment, which proposes changes to Article 4, subsection 4.3, accessory use standards for outdoor display, and Article 5, development standards, subsection 512, signage. The issue that we have in front of us is businesses along 2 main corridors have had property diminished across their frontage due to right-of-way acquisitions over time. Some of these businesses would like to have an area for outdoor display sales, but are unable to do so because of the current 100-foot setback requirement that's found in Article 4.3 accessory use standards that did not exist prior to the Unified Development Ordinance being adopted. So staff has been working with several folks along these corridors and reviewed ordinances and are proposing to create an exception to the 100-foot rule for both Marine and Lejeune Boulevards. Then as part of the 512 signage components, some of this is cleanup items, some of it's specific to this request. So I'll jump to the last bullet here, create alternative for feather flags. That's kind of what was part of this main change, and I'll get into more specifics here in just a second on that. The other items above it, the three bullets ahead of that, are just some cleanup items that we're proposing to do along with this. Currently, the UDO has some exemptions for temporary signage for holiday displays and lights. We're proposing to add a start date and then reference the holidays in the UDO admin manual. Right now, there's an end date, but it doesn't say when they could start. So if you don't have a start date, you have an end date, but when can you start? So we're gonna add that language because at least that'll create some clarity for both staff and the development community, business community. Political signs, once again, we're gonna add the start date and we're gonna extend the end date based on the current political season, but mainly to match what the North Carolina General Statutes say. Right now, we believe it says that we have to pick them up or they have to be picked up within 3 days following the election. We're going to bump that to 10 days to follow that statute. And the ad start date will be 30 days prior to voting, which includes early voting. So early voting begins on Thursday, so everybody make sure you go out and vote on October the 17th. That's the first day. There's 5 locations that are set up in Onslow County. So this would specify that 30 days prior to that, the political signs can be deployed. Same thing with the temporary signs, add a start end date. So as far as the outside display, here's just a graphical illustration of outside display, retail type establishment with outdoor sales areas. This is kind of a good example. Here's a bad example. This isn't anywhere in town. This is just, finding images on the web page that if you have an area for outdoor display, it can look like this or it can look like this. Now, we have put in some provisions that basically states that there's a limited area that the area can be, and also that it has to be brought in at the close of business every day. Hopefully, that keeps that from happening. If you got to bring that in every night, hopefully there'll be a little bit more methodology in how the items are displayed. And then the feather flag alternative is, you can see the feather flags on the left-hand side of your screen. Sites are allowed to have one feather flag for every 50 feet of street frontage that they have, or in multi-tenant situations, every tenant's allowed to have at least one. So if they only have 30 feet of store frontage, they get one feather flag. If they have 110 feet of shop frontage, they get two. This would allow them to say, okay, well, instead of doing feather flags, we want to use the temporary signage that's on the right-hand side of the screen. These are just some examples that we found on another municipality webpage that let's say, hey, we want to have one feather flag since we're allowed two. We want to have one feather flag and one of these small signs. They could do one and one. They could do two of one, two of the other. If they're allowed more than that, they can have any combination. But right now, businesses cannot use these that are on the right-hand side. They can use feather flags, but they can't use these temporary signs. This proposal would say, not only can you have the feather flags now, you can choose to have feather flags or this or any combination. So this is going to open up some temporary signage that currently the UDO does not allow for.
Do you have to have permits ahead of time for this, or can you just put them out there?
Those are excluded from permits. Still have regulations, but do not have permits. Cannot be in the rights of way, cannot be animated. There's provisions that they have to meet, but you can put one of these barbershops feather flags up tomorrow. You don't have to have a permit. You do have to make sure they're maintained. They can't be tattered, torn. They can't be in the right of way. They are certain, I think it's 15 feet tall, 5 feet wide is the maximums. But as long as they meet those standards, in fact, Planning Board was instrumental in this, on these requirements a long time ago. There was a lot around town that were basically getting damaged and not being replaced, and Planning Board felt that there was a need to create some standards, and planning staff brought that forth for Planning Board consideration and council adoption. This kind of, similar to that, adds another opportunity that currently, I believe the ordinance says they could have one of these for no more than 10 days a year and no more than 3 days in a row. So, but you can have a feather flag every day, all day. So this just opens up additional opportunities than what we currently have today. That being said, I've covered the two main issues and then the additional standards that we've added the clarity to. And at this point in time, staff's recommending approval of the UDO text amendment. That's found in attachment A, because we believe that it provides clarity and gives some additional alternatives to the feather flags. And I've been told, although I've heard conflicting information, that feather flags are fairly expensive, but maybe the price on those have come down a little bit. But in the past, they were way more expensive than maybe the corrugated signs. So it may be a cheaper alternative that allows a startup business to have something versus the feather flags, especially if you go to begin to customize them. But maybe the dollars and cents have kind of aligned better than what they were at one time. We didn't pull any estimates, but either way, it gives another alternative than what's available now. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Ryan, you indicated that we're changing the political sign removal from 3 days to 10 days to align with the North Carolina statute. Could we not go along with North Carolina statute and maintain the 3, or would that put us in violation?
As of right now, you could leave it at 3 days.
Most parties are pretty good about picking their stuff up. I mean,
I think that when you deal with a national type election like we're dealing with this year with the presidential component, you may have, not that the local party affiliation folks don't go out and pick up, but just because of the number, the volume, the area, it's more than just kind of a local election. It's a national election. So that gives them a little bit more time to pick them up.
I was just curious. I didn't know if we would be in violation if we tried to.
As of now, we would not be, but the General Assembly could always change and say that we cannot be any more strict than the state law. Yeah. That's not what's currently on the books. So great question. We could leave it at 3 days, but this just kind of gives them a little bit extra time to take them down.
Yeah, I mean, somebody could always challenge if we want to. So I think moving to the 10 days is more than fair, because it takes time. When we get out there, like you said, most of the time they're good about picking up, and then there's at times it's going to kind of drag out. So it's like, okay, let's show you a little grace, okay, but you got 10 days. 10-day window, I think, is more than fair.
Any
And
other
all this
questions?
pertains to commercial or right-of-way settings, not residential. If somebody wanted to leave a political sign in their yard, I guess they have the ability to do that.
So political signs, as far as regardless of commercial or residential, there's an exemption for the political signs. So, but that's only going to be 30 days prior to and 10 days following.
So even in a residential setting on their own property,
Correct.
they would have to be removed.
That is correct.
Anything else? I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of the UDO text amendment found in attachment A. It adds clarity to several sign regulations for start and end dates.
Very good. I have a motion and a second. Thank you, Grace. All right, all in favor of Homer's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? There we go, motion carries. Number 3, sir.
Thank you. Number 3, this one's pretty straightforward. You know, I heard it mentioned earlier that, you know, and council's been having several workshops now on DFI. It's a group from UNC that's helping, and they'll be back to speak for the 3rd time evaluating housing needs in Jacksonville. And, you know, looking at our plan unit development district, since we adopted this prior to the UDO, so we've had it over a decade now. We've only had 2 proposals. The one that you just saw tonight, which was approved back in 2013. And then we had one other, which was an existing development, the Holiday City Mobile Home Park. We've not really had a whole lot of interest in PUDs. So in light of the lot sizes in Jacksonville, the undeveloped lot sizes, the housing need, the lack of interest, we are proposing this change. We're going to reward some of the information in the district tables, but the biggest one is the second bullet here. We are proposing to eliminate the minimum acreage requirements for planned development rezonings. And we think that this may cause some interest that we haven't had. So for example, in the PDR, the minimum size for a district is 10 acres. 15 is if commercial is proposed to be included with it, similar to the one we had tonight. And then on the PDC, the minimum acreage is 20 acres. And then on the PDT, which is the Planned Development Traditional Neighborhood Design, is 10. So you got to have that minimum acreage to even consider this. Well, Clare and Associates drafted the city's UDO back in 2007 through the 2014 timeframe. They also created the city of Fayetteville's UDO and also Currituck County's. So we actually looked at Fayetteville's ordinance, since there's a lot of similarities between us and Fayetteville. They have 0 minimum acreage in all 3 of their PUDs. So this is following what Fayetteville has in their UDO, and we think that this may help kickstart some opportunities for somebody wanting to rezone to a PUD and specify densities and special things, just like you all considered there with agenda item number 1. Right now, it's not even really been something that people have considered. So maybe if it's larger than those minimum acreage, then maybe they would consider it. But you may have an infill situation where they acquire 5 acres. This would allow them to kind of create a custom zone on that 5 acres. And we believe that this is something that's worthy of making an adjustment to see if this helps spur some of the PUD rezonings, but also, you know, we're kind of running out of land with the annexation laws, and you know, this may help spawn some additional development opportunities that we haven't had because of those acreage standards. So,
In your experience and being in the job a while, have you ever had a time when that would have come in handy? I mean, you can think of a time when, hey, that would have worked.
I wish I could say yes, but I don't know of one. I mean, I can think of some parcels that maybe it would have, but it's not that they came and said, hey, well, I'd really like to be able to do a PUD, but We can't do it because we got 14 acres and the ordinance requires
Well,
15.
it seems like a reasonable idea. I just was, hoping there would have been, okay.
Do developers like if you were developing like the vineyards, let's say, I just know we just approved that. Why, I guess, aren't they using this? Wouldn't it be better for them to maximize, like in the last, on agenda item 1, we had less units per, or I guess in that case, it wouldn't help them, but we had less units per acre than what was allowed.
So since you mentioned the vineyards, one of the things we're looking at right now is one aspect of that development, if they would have gone with a PD district, and I can't remember the acreage, I don't know whether it was bigger or smaller than what the ordinance allows, but if there's a proposed street that goes through there and they have a 35-foot setback, they could propose something less than the 35 and not have that impact their overall density. Because at the end of the day, it's all about numbers. It's about dollars and cents. They have to be able to make the yield on the property after they've put all the thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in the water and sewer infrastructure and the roads. So if they're proposing 100 units, but the road that the city ordinance requires to go through that to make that connection with setbacks causes them to go from 100 down to 60, that's, they say, well, we can't do the development, so we're going to go ahead and just not do it.
So that's what I was meaning. This will help them. It should benefit developers.
It's certain, well, but if they're already above that minimum threshold, why they chose not to go that, I think sometimes it's a little bit new. If we can get it with a standard zoning, then why do a PUD?
Right.
For example, look at what was done tonight. The developer could probably do 99% of what they wanted under the base district. So what's the benefit? Now, we'd have to look at it a little bit further and say, okay, well, but you wouldn't be able to do the marina, for example. You could do the community document sale, but you couldn't do the marina component without the PUD. So maybe that's, okay, well, I need it for that one reason. That may be the only reason. The 1 foot setback, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know if that causes them a lot yield plus or minus a whole lot with a 1 foot. It wasn't like they were asking for 10 feet of difference.
Right.
The private road standards, that probably is going to help them increase some yield there potentially. So, I mean, it hasn't been used that often, and we feel like based on Fayetteville's code, nobody's been using it. We figured let's see if this can create some opportunities that we don't have currently, especially with some infill development. There may be an infill piece that if acquired and raised and put back, if it's less than 10 acres hypothetically, this PUD gives an opportunity that they wouldn't have if this amendment's not approved. So, Jeremy, you want to add something?
I was just going to say, with today's market of needing more housing too, there's trends and there's different types of housing type that may not necessarily fit within a specific zoning district. You could have like Ryan said, an infill acreage of 5 to 10 acres, and perhaps they want to put 10 single families on there, but they don't want to deed them off. They want to rent the individual single family homes. It's the housing type that could be part of a PDR too. So I think that's the advantageous part of the PDR more so than, that's another aspect to get around creating your own zoning district that's specific to one parcel of land, not citywide.
Yeah, and to expand upon that a little bit more, although we haven't really had a specific request for this, I'll use this to kind of piggyback on what Jeremy just kind of alluded to. Tiny homes. Jacksonville allows tiny homes. We don't have a prohibition of tiny homes. The problem is the minimum lot size requirement that we have is 3,000 square feet in the downtown district. The next is 5,000. So if you're going to propose to build tiny homes, they're going to be on 5,000 square foot lots. So you can have a tiny home all you want to, but you're going to be on a big lot. This would allow the developer to say, hey, I want to take this 15 acres and or 20 acres and I want to build a tiny home development. And I want them to be on a 1,500 square foot lot, and I'm going to build 400 square foot homes. We don't have that opportunity today. with this change, and we don't have anybody that's asking for this. I'm just giving another example to kind of piggyback on what Jeremy's saying. This would give a tool that we don't currently have. It's no different than, remember, a few years ago, we created the residential mobile home district. We didn't have a residential mobile home district. Nobody's ever come forth and requested that district.
Are you looking at taking it to 0, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay.
So you could have 5 acres, you could have 3 acres, and if you wanted to create this, it's got to go through both planning board for recommendation and city council and a public hearing for consideration. So if it doesn't belong there, then findings of facts, it's denied. It's a legislative decision. But if it fits and it makes sense with what's being proposed, where it's being proposed.
What apartments work too?
Anything.
Anything? Okay.
Ryan, in the commercial one, could it be sort of similar to mobile homes? Could it be a food truck district?
You can specify whatever land use you want to within the PD district. It's really like Jeremy mentioned, it's conditional zoning. It's your one-of-a-kind zoning district. The only way it's not one of a kind is if you have the same terms and condition for your second project, but we're going to give it a different ordinance number, so it's not really going to be one of a kind. It's going to be a spitting image of that other one, but it's going to be a whole different ordinance number, so it's technically not going to be the same.
Does the same owner or developer have to own the whole planned development area? Could it be multi-people involved in the same area?
As far as like 2 or 3 different lots, I think they could pull together and petition to rezone collectively. But there's some laws that say that if Ryan King's trying to rezone Jeremy Smith's property, I have to notify Jeremy Smith that I'm trying to rezone his property. So if Jeremy Smith's not the applicant, I've got to provide proof that I've notified Mr. Smith that I'm trying to rezone his property.
Right. I just want to make sure this didn't open the door for something like, for somebody to rezone a whole area. I guess it would be a benefit, I'm saying in this case, like if me and Logan wanted to develop a piece of property together,
Yes.
I had 5 acres, he had 5 acres, we could develop it together.
Absolutely.
And create this.
You just both would have to sign on that application.
Okay, cool.
And if you don't, you have to show us that you've notified Logan that you're planning to rezone his property.
Right.
And that's kind of like what Jeremy mentioned earlier.
I don't like that come here.
Staff can propose, it happened last month. So we had the request on Hargreaves Street. This landowner said, hey, I want to clean up my zoning district. While we were looking at that, we said, well, hey, the church next door is in the same problem with 3 zoning districts. We reached out to the church and said, hey, we have this rezoning request next door to you. We feel that this will be a benefit to you. So we gave them a notification that, hey, look, we want to include this. Do you have any questions, any concerns? And that's why one part of that 2-part rezoning was requested by the applicant. Staff used it at the same time, similar to what we're doing here on the last item where we're making a few cleanup items. Now, the problem with that, if we're not careful, we propose to make a change like that, and we don't want to scuttle the mission. We don't want to impact the person making the request. Well, because we've added this other component, now the board and council doesn't want to do the rezoning because we've added this on to it. There's always that risk that we run, so we try to be very meticulous with the way we do that. We felt that the church would have to buffer from their own property line, which makes no sense. And we would eliminate the non-conforming component with that. And we felt like there was more pros than cons to making that change, and that's why we included it. But we didn't just do it within a vacuum. We reached out, we had conversations with the folks at the church to say, hey, look, you're going to get a notice. You're included in this. Here's why, if you're okay with this, we're going to move forward. If not, then we might drop it off and bring it separately. That way it doesn't create a problem for the applicant that said, hey, just rezone my property, please. I'm not interested in the church. But because the church was 3 zoning districts on one parcel, one church part, it didn't make sense to just ignore that and not include it. But that's always the risk that we run.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the standards, or the new amendment based on finding facts A through, is it J?
for this one. It was, look at his recommendation, yeah.
Found attachment A.
Page 61 will get you where you're looking for.
61, there we go, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Recommend that.
The proposed amendment is consistent with the adopted CAMA policy 38.2, revise the development regulations to be responsive to initiative development proposals and existing conditions. The amendment is reasonable and is in public interest. Staff recommends the, oh, yeah, sorry.
I got a motion.
I'll second.
I got Grace with a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Like sign? There you go. Ryan, because you did such a great job with that, the PD discussion, we're going to call that our Ryan's tips, and I'm going to save the other one we were planning. We'll get that next month. So, but I'm ready for your report, sir.
About as good as that other. I don't have a report. Oh, I will say this. So agenda items 1 and 3 are going to be considered on the November 19th City Council meeting here in Council Chambers at 5:30. Agenda item number 2, as relates to the signage, we're taking next week to the City Council meeting. That also will be a public hearing. So all 3 items tonight will be public hearings in front of City Council. Item 2, next week. Items 1 and 3 will be November 19th. There's my report.
Good tip. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
I would look for a motion to adjourn the meeting, and
So
thank
moved.
you. We have a
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Well done.
Who made the motion and the second on that one?